Good morning, everybody. After that optimistic note from Sushant, I'll try and bring out some of the efforts which Pakistan will try to make to revive its strategic relevance. And I think the first four questions which the chair raised, very important points, have been by and large answered by the two speakers. But the last point that she talked about was very important, where she said that Pakistan has positioned itself always as a strategic service provider. And now that relevance is declining, and how will now Pakistan revive that strategic relevance? For decades, the narrative that Pakistan leveraged was that it's a state which is too dangerous to fail. And now that narrative is not fetching the dividends which Pakistan has been traditionally used to. So in the next 15, 16, 17 minutes, I'll just run you through as in how do I see Pakistan's posturing evolving, what are the efforts that it's going to be making in this direction. Pakistan's declining strategic relevance, the reasons we would all know by and large, and some of them have been discussed and talked about in the opening remarks also, but its strained relations with the US, which started during Trump's tenure. We had the decline in the security assistance from complete, slashing down of the security aid and assistance from United States, which has been the bottom line of the foreign policy with the US for Pakistan. US exit from Afghanistan 2021, obviously now the relevance and the significance of Pakistan was not the same as it was when US was engaged in Afghanistan. And very importantly, US focus on the Indo-Pacific strategy. The Biden administration's national security policy and defense security strategy, which we had in 2022, does not mention Pakistan. Pakistan does not find mention there. So obviously there is a declining of relevance that we see. Very important factor in that whole strategic profile of Pakistan is also being challenged by India's economic growth, where we aim to be the 5 trillion economy by 2029. India's strategic rise, ability to manage world affairs, successful conduct of G20, its ability to drive the international consensus on the critical issues, the diplomatic profile, rising partnerships, and very importantly, as the External Affairs Minister said, and had a projection of India as Vishwamitra in the UNGA conference. The Russia-Ukraine war has obviously distracted the attention globally, United States specifically, and Europe towards the war, and Pakistan is not getting their share of attention which they have been used to. And above all, the persisting instability which Mr. Devashir talked and Sushant talked, and its dependence on external assistance. So the whole, the diplomatic artistry which Pakistan had for years have been channeled towards just fetching funds internationally, and that's what is happening at the international level. In the last 2 or 3 decades, if I have to see, Pakistan, I think, doesn't have a single success story apart from the military buildup and the nuclear expansion of the nuclear arsenal. Now, what has been the traditional factor for strategic relevance? Just the geographic location, which was talked in the inaugural situation, because of which inaugural session, because of which Pakistan became the US ally in the 50s, 60s, in the 1980s, post-2001. That is something that it has leveraged. Also, it has been the partition, and with the partition, the history of Pakistan, where it inherited that entitlement, that I have a lesser share of the territory, I did not get the optimum share of the defense equipment. So that entitlement was always used to drive the narrative of victimhood, which continues till today. And then it is the Islamic country with a strong military. So extension of the military and the security umbrella to the Islamic world has been leveraged by Pakistan, and we saw how money came from the Muslim world for the acquisition of the equipment and also building up the bomb, which was which it demanded the money under the umbrella of Islamic bomb. And then these are the 3 points which I see with which Pakistan was in a way born with: location, history, religion. But then there are factors which increase the strategic relevance of the countries, the factors which evolved over time. And those factors are obviously India's hostility with India, India's centricity and obsession, which has been a main driver for its narrative for acquisition of the military equipment, and also its alliance with China. China's alliance with Pakistan has been, the bottom line is their hostility to India and China's ambition to balance India and counter India. Pakistan's linkages to the terror organization, and it has been a breeding ground for the terror faction, but it has access to the prime targets. Around 150 terrorists listed in UN list are in Pakistan. So obviously any country, any actor which wants access to these targets would need Pakistan, and it in a way leverages that. Nuclear weapon and expanding arsenal, along with the terrorist, high profile terrorists and large number of terrorists, have made the narrative stronger that it is a state which cannot be allowed to fail, and the world cannot see the collapse of Pakistan. And very importantly, Pakistani diaspora outside Pakistan. We have seen how critical role they play even in the decision making in the countries like United States, Canada, UK, and some of the European countries like Italy. So they have been playing a critical role here. Even with these factors of strategic relevance, Pakistan had very misplaced national priorities, because of which we have seen and heard the crisis. And those national priorities have been primarily because of its desire to stay at par with India, which was driven by the identity crisis it suffers till date, and also the projected threat perceptions that it carries. Now, that desire to stay at par with India has been driven by the military lobby, and that leads to the misplaced national priorities. And what have been those misplaced national priorities? The national interests have been defined to cater military's interests. And that's what Sushant said, that it's not military's job what they are doing in the economic domain, but this is the problem that we have of misplaced national priorities. Strained civil-military relations, dictated democracy, we have heard from Mr. Devasha. Projection of perceived threat perception has been a national narrative. Defense buildup has been prioritized at the expense of the social sectors, which have been neglected, where the spending lies below 1% of the GDP till date. Alliances of Pakistan mainly have been driven to grow for the military purposes, for the military buildup, its alliance with the United States and China. We have the economic dimension of the alliance with China now, CPEC, but that's after 3 or 4 decades of the alliance that came in 2013. Before that, it was specifically targeted to build up Pakistan's military capability and the nuclear capability. And then, very importantly, Indo-centricity has defined Pakistan's neighborhood management, its management and its policies in Afghanistan. It's seeking strategic depth in Afghanistan. One of the 5 drivers have been that it wanted to deny India any strategic space in Afghanistan. Where is Pakistan standing today? We have heard, but then what does Pakistan have right now it needs to conquer is for Pakistan military to burnish its tarnished image. The kind of image decline we saw in the last year has been very significant. We have never seen that in the military, in Pakistan military's history. Need to boost the morale of the military and the people. Very critical. Need to project stability to get the continuous, inflow of funds. Need to highlight the centrality of the Kashmir issue, which will intensify specifically after the Supreme Court judgment on Monday, and need to make Pakistan itself relevant. So in this context of making itself relevant, I think I have 2 scenarios here. There is one scenario which is where a normal country would behave and follow those things, and which it would do to revive its strategic relevance, and which is an improbable choice given the nature of Pakistan and the behavioral pattern, because it's not a normal country. The normal choices would be focused on the economic growth, connectivity. Given the strategic location of Pakistan, it can very easily be a it can thrive on the transit economy, which has not happened. Efforts towards inclusivity, which would reduce levels of alienation and address the anti-state sentiments. Abandon narrow ideological paradigm of Pakistani nationalism. The Pakistani nationalism has been focused on the anti-Indianism, anti-Hindutva, and so much so that few days back I was reading, and that this is a glaring example of the Pakistani nationalism, that few years back a yoga center in Islamabad was burned because a news channel anchor said that it is a threat to Pakistan's national security because it is, the whole gist is from the Indian guru, although it was run by a Pakistani through a European NGO, but it was seen as a threat to Pakistan's national security, and redefine equation with neighbors. So these are the steps for the normal country, which I don't see happening in Pakistan. But what are the probable choices which Pakistan is likely to make? And this is one is on the behavioral pattern of Pakistan, which we have seen for decades, so many decades. And secondly, what are the steps it's already taking, and joining those dots, where do we see Pakistan going and how would it like to now regain the relevance? Strengthen the image and morale of the military, very important, and focus on the military build-up without impacting the defense spending, as Sushant also mentioned, and that will come mainly from the Chinese assistance, and that is happening. We have not seen a change in the acquisition pattern with this economic decline. Naval build-up and exercises likely to be prioritized. We have seen that emphasis on the naval exercises, the exercise they held with Saudi Arabia and also China, Sea Guardian 3 recently. So these are the pointers that we see. We also see very aggressively going for the naval acquisitions from Pakistan. And these frequency of the military exercises is likely to intensify because the projection is very important for Pakistan and the image and morale of the military. Military exercises, I think, for counter-terrorism will definitely intensify. And what we have seen that it conducted exercises with Central Asia, Eternal Brotherhood 2, and also with Saudi Arabia, Al-Badr 1, focused on counter-terrorism. So I think this is an area which Pakistan is definitely going to focus. The efforts will be to leverage the projected counter-terror experience and the intel capabilities to its strategic allies, and counter-terror military operations targeting the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan after the elections, if they happen in February, cannot be ruled out because I see a very strong likelihood of that happening. On the nuclear front, which is happening repeatedly in the last many years, but this will intensify, and we saw it in May 2023 this year on the anniversary of the nuclear tests. Consistently question the credibility and seriousness of India's no first use, because that provides them the rationale to build up and expand their arsenal. Escalate the nuclear capability build-up. We saw that they tested the MIRV missile, Abadil, with the range of 2,200 kilometers recently, and the doctrine and the statements are talking about the fact that we can cover any part of India. So that projection is going to intensify. It's already happening. But parallelly, even though it will try to project victimhood with the increasing number of terror attacks that it has, it will avoid bringing international attention on the issue of safety and security of the nuclear weapons. And those announcements are also happening on the command and control. Entangling of the nuclear issues with conventional space has always been Pakistan's forte, and that there I don't see any change. Every crisis between India and Pakistan carries an element of threat of nuclear weapons. So the objective will be to scale up the nuclear escalation, attract nuclear global attention towards the bilateral conflicts and crisis. And Khalid Kidwai very recently made a statement. It is the full spectrum deterrence capability of Pakistan that brings the international community rushing into South Asia to prevent the wider conflagration. And then greater centralization by force, military profile will be consistently strengthened, institutionalize and enhance military economic footprint. We have seen, and both the speakers talked about the Special Investment Facilitation Council. Also some of the amendments which have been made giving more power to the military, criminalizing any offense to the military's image is also been there. And then very importantly, I think message that is going after May 9th is that there is zero tolerance silence for any military voices. So that maybe somewhere answers your question, ma'am, about the institutions, if they will be able to assert themselves, because I think this messaging has been very strong in Pakistan by the military. Very importantly, I think Pakistan will create a semblance of normalcy with engagements with China, Gulf, and the United States. That is very critical for Pakistan. With China, the relations are indispensable, no matter how much we hear about the Chinese workers being killed or the CPEC projects being not functioning, or Chinese being pressurizing Pakistan, for that matter, for the repaying of their loans. But I think this relationship will not change. Pakistan's dependence on China will continue to intensify militarily, strategically, economically, and very importantly, diplomatically, which in the last 10 years we have seen it in a very strong manner from China. So Chinese muscularity Pakistan will continue to leverage. With the US, Pakistan's relationship will play a very critical role, and as it remains the export destination, lifeline of the IMF, critical investor, and incidentally is the largest investor in Pakistan. But what is happening right now, that the US is very focused on the non-traditional security dimension of the relationship, focus on climate change, economy, imports, but Pakistan has been trying aggressively to revive the security dimension in the relationship with the United States. Those talks are happening. We haven't heard anything on papers as yet, but yes, Pakistan is trying hard for that. Pakistan and the Islamic world, yes, aggressive efforts to build relation with the Islamic world will be there. Saudi Arabia is being projected as a potential investment. For last 3 years, we've been hearing that Saudi Arabia will invest 10 billion, 15 billion. Nothing has happened so far. But yes, we have heard that they have kind of managed a deal with Saudi Arabia that free trade agreement will be signed with the GCC. So that if happens, that is a step forward in a way for Pakistan. Nawaz Sharif is seen to be a useful player to attract investment from Gulf, and that is a brownie point for Nawaz Sharif. But I think the real areas where we will see more action from Pakistan are Central Asia and our neighborhood. With Russia, Pakistan will have the efforts to enhance relations, but there are limitations. Because the Russians are not particularly, we have not seen much interest from Russia to engage in Pakistan. In fact, the latest document which came out in 2023 from the Foreign Ministry of Russia did not even mention Pakistan anywhere. But it still has two critical interest areas, which is terrorism and narcotics, where it will use Pakistan and it tends to use, but nothing more than that, at least for now, I don't see, because Russia's needs are very much being met by Central Asia, China, Iran, India. But we will see Pakistan's efforts to leverage the space in Central Asia. The trade with Uzbekistan has seen a sudden hike from 26 million in 2019-2020 to 126 million in 2022 and 2023, figures are saying. Also building up the connectivity, focusing on that. First export cargo from Pakistan to Kyrgyzstan via China has been transported just 2 weeks back. So we will see these measures from Pakistan, because Central Asia in their own mind could open more channels of collaboration with Russia and China for Pakistan. Also, I think expansion in neighborhood will be an area for Pakistan. It is already happening. There are efforts there, and military diplomacy will be a key point here. We have seen what happened with Nepal after the pause of the Gorkha recruitments for the Gorkha regiment from India. We saw that immediately Pakistan offered that we could have a Gorkha regiment, and nothing has happened on that front. But yes, this is the military diplomacy that we will see how Pakistan will try to leverage some vacuum that has been created. And Sri Lanka, we have seen repeated statement, but nothing concrete as of now. Maldives, there is potentially in their mind there is a potentially they could leverage the ideological connection, because a significant numbers of nationals from Maldives go to Pakistan Pakistani madrasa to study. And also currently the regime change in Maldives is pro-China, so that is something which Pakistan could intend to leverage in its favor. Dynamics with Afghanistan have changed completely as of now. There are what I call it shrinking carrots and increasing sticks, where we see a complete policy shift in Pakistan, where they have announced the return of the refugees. Cargo containers containing humanitarian aid for Afghanistan have been stalled at the Karachi port, more than 3,000 containers, and also Pakistan has announced that it will refrain support for Afghanistan at the international level. Obviously, these are efforts to intensify pressure on Kabul to control the TTP, but will this achieve results, these steps? I don't think so. It can, in fact, have an adverse implication for Pakistan. Given these choices which Pakistan intends to make, or it's making, is in the process, what do we expect now? I think Pakistan's likely choices will bring in the dividends, but it will bring in a short-term relief. Ideological nationalism will stay as a potent tool. I don't see that changing. We don't see that changing into a functional nationalism for Pakistan. With India, we will hear more in the second session, but Pakistan will continue to issue periodic statements showing interest in talking to India because that suits them, but then we are on a no-starter platform right now. Let's see what happens after elections. Narrative on Kashmir will be intensified, and hopefully Hasnan sir will give us deeper insights on that. Projection of India's ideology as a threat to Pakistan and Muslims of the world will intensify after the elections in Pakistan and India. Pakistan's covert war strategy to continue with varying intensity against India. We will see maybe change of the platforms and the areas from where they will operate. But yes, that intensity I don't see covert war strategy being eliminated. Projection of military preparedness is very critical, and we have seen in the last 2 years at least 5 or 6 very significant statements coming from the military army chief talking about the fact that we are ready for the war, and that is going to continue. Entangling of nuclear issues with conventional space works for Pakistan, and that also will continue. Islamabad efforts to revive its strategic relevance will continue to evolve. However, I feel that the strategic space for Pakistan to enhance its strategic relevance has shrunk considerably because of multiple factors that I mentioned in the beginning of my presentation. What does India need to do? We will hear more, but yes, what we are doing, I think, is helping our position. But our critical challenge will be to manage our rise, our partnership. So management of India's rise becomes very important in the whole issue, and also the momentum of our neighborhood first policy need to be maintained. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chawla. Clearly, of course, you have